Today, I'm going to be taking you from beginner to pro with MCP servers inside of N8N. I'm going to show you how to create a web scraping MCP server and then how to connect that to your AI agent. And even if you're a beginner and you want to use this for some other type of MCP server or some other kind of agent, this is going to help you understand the fundamental things that you're going to need to do with every tool or every MCP server that you create. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand everything that you need to know to master MCP servers inside of N8N. So there's two sides to this MCP server thing, and I'm going to show you how you can create both of them in today's video, but I thought it would be easier if we started by illustrating this visually in this diagram here. So the first thing that you're going to have to understand when you're working with MCP servers is that there's a client side and a server side. Now, this might look a little bit confusing. This was confusing for me when I got started too, but I'm going to really break it down and simplify it for you. I'm going to show you all the steps to build this stuff, so don't be too concerned about that. Now, what happens when your AI agent needs to access a tool? Typically, you'd have to define a bunch of tools right under that agent, and it's just messy and inefficient. So what you can do instead is you can bundle those tools into an MCP server. Now, this just makes it a lot more organized, and your agent is going to give you a better response if you can put them into an MCP server. So what happens here is when you send this agent something and it needs to access a tool in order to get context to answer that question, like let's imagine that you're trying to have it book an event in your calendar, or you're trying to have it scrape a web page. You could create an MCP server for that this client can then decide, or this AI agent rather can decide, okay, do I need to call this MCP server that I have access to? And that's where this whole process kicks off, right? It chats back and forth with you. You send it a message, it sends one back. You send it a message, oh, it needs to use a tool. Now it's going to call your MCP server for you. Maybe it's going to scrape a website. Maybe it's going to edit your Supabase database. Maybe it's going to book an event in your calendar. It's going to go off and do all of these different things for you, and then it will come back with a response here. So you can think of this as just an orderly way to set up your tools for your AI agent. And then that MCP server is just going to send that response right back to the client side, and that client or that AI agent is going to be able to respond to you with the proper information and confirmation that it completed the job that it needed to do. So you can kind of think of the client side and the AI agent as the talking, the conversational part. And when it needs a little bit of help, or when it needs to access a tool, what it's going to do is it's going to call the MCP server, and that MCP server is going to go off. It's going to get the information, and then it's going to send you a response back. We'll build this first, and then next we're going to go into building the actual client side, or the AI agent that can talk with that server. Now, before we get into building our MCP server and the client side agent that we can talk with that has the ability to interact with that server, what we need to do first is we need to make sure we're on the right version of N8N. So in order to find that, you're going to log into your N8N account, and then from there, you can go to the admin panel. And then once you're on the admin panel, you're going to see this little settings gear right here. And this is what you're going to want to click on in order to get to the right spot. So we're going to click on that settings gear. And right here where it says N8N version, you're going to want to actually switch this drop down to a version that's 1.88. So right now this just says latest beta, and it's 1.88. It's the newest version that I can access. And I can just click on this drop down, and then I can click on the 1.88 version or newer, and I can select that. And then from there, you have to remember to hit this save changes button here. So if you haven't done this before, you're going to need to click that, change it to 1.88 or higher, and then hit save changes. Once you do that, you're going to notice that down here it says currently online for me, but it will say updating in progress or something like that. And it will give you a little yellow circle to show you that it's actually updating. So after you make that change and you hit save changes, you're going to see that yellow circle for a minute, but don't worry, it's not going to be there forever. It's just updating. And then once it's updated, you can then go back to the dashboard by clicking up here in the menu, and then you just hit open. And next we're going to hit create workflow. Now, when I'm creating MCP servers, what I want to do is I really want to organize my N8N workspace effectively. So what you can do is you can go up here to the name and you can actually name it exactly what it is. So I'm just going to say MCP server. And in this case, I'm going to be building a server that can scrape websites for me. So I can talk with my AI agent, and then the AI agent is going to have access to this scraping capability. So it's going to be able to get real-time information from the internet and then come back to me with those results. So I'm going to call this MCP server Firecrawl, because Firecrawl is the tool that I'm going to be using for this guide. So now, as you can see, I've renamed this project right here. And what you can also do if you really want to get organized with this is you can hit add tag. And if I hit add tag, I can name this MCP server and then hit create tag. Now, I would recommend adding this MCP server tag to any of the MCP servers that you create. So once you get a nice, a solid base of MCP servers, you're going to have a bunch that you can pick from inside of N8N. And you can really just custom develop these and work on them one by one, as opposed to having to go into all of your agents and make changes as these tools change and as they update and as you want to add features and this and that. So I have that little MCP server tag. And now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to click this plus button right here. And once you click that, you can type in MCP in the search bar, and you're going to see the MCP server trigger. This is the one that you're going to want to click on right here. It exposes N8N tools as an MCP server endpoint. So I'll click on that. And you're going to notice this is very basic. This is a typical webhook that we're used to if you've worked with webhooks inside of N8N, and it really makes it simple. You can also add authentication if you want to make sure this doesn't get called by just anyone. And basically, if this URL gets leaked or something like that, and people get access to it, they're going to be able to call your MCP server. So if you want to save on your executions, you don't want people querying your MCP server, then you can add authentication here if you want to. But for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to be leaving it wide open, and I'm just going to be using this URL directly. Now, once you have this set up, you're just going to go back to Canvas, and then we're simply going to add some tools to this MCP server. So where this gets really powerful is when you can actually use HTTP requests. And an HTTP request is just going to allow you to connect to different tools on the internet. Now, as I said, today I'm going to be using the Firecrawl tool, so I want to go find the documentation for how we contact this tool, and then I can create my own custom tools right underneath this MCP server. So if you head over to firecrawl.dev, this is the website that I'm going to be using. This is the tool that I'm going to be using for today's example. And now here's why I like Firecrawl for scraping. You can use other tools, or you could use an API actor or just an HTTP request, like a GET request. But the nice thing about Firecrawl is they're actually going to format all of that data for you however you want to receive it. So if you want the raw HTML, like the code structure that makes up the page, or if you just want it to be in clean formatted markdown, you can have it do that for you. And the really nice thing about Firecrawl is they're going to give you 500 free credits to begin with. You're not even going to need to pay for this tool until you're taking it to its absolute maximum potential. So that means you guys can just follow along with me here. Now, every website is a little bit different. Some allow scraping, some are not so friendly towards it. You're just going to have to read the terms on that website. And if I'm honest, a lot of times people kind of go against these rules, and Firecrawl does kind of add a barrier between you and whatever website you're scraping. So you don't have to worry about getting your personal IP banned. But regardless, from an ethical point of view, you're going to want to make sure that it's okay to scrape whatever you're scraping if this is what you want to use MCP servers for. So what I'm going to be doing is using a site that allows scraping right out of the box, and that is toscrape.com. Specifically books.toscrape.com. And this is just a database of books that I can use to test out my different scraping tools, and I can really just get a good idea of how they're working, right? So this provides fictional books and different ratings and titles and prices for those books. And it even gives categories so that we can really practice our scraping and we can get this down and kind of figure out how our tool works, right? So this is the website I'm going to be using. Now, what we can do to test out Firecrawl is I can use this website right here. So if I wanted to scrape this website, I would just type in books.toscrape.com, and then I can just hit start for free, 500 credits. And what it's going to do, guys, is it's actually going to go find that URL. It's going to scrape through that, and it's going to give me the results from that homepage. So if I scroll through here, you'll see that it's given me it in nice, clean markdown format. And it's showing me those books, their prices, and basically just giving me all of the content on that website. Now, scraping can be useful for keeping up on competitor pricing. It can be useful for lead generation. It can be useful for all sorts of different things. So this is just an example of how Firecrawl works. Now let's connect this to N8N and connect this to our MCP server so that we can use this tool wherever we are on the internet. Now, the other neat thing about Firecrawl that I haven't quite touched on yet is that you can scrape individual pages using Scrape. You can use their crawl tool to crawl the URL and access subpages underneath that URL. So this is going to give you a more robust idea of like everything that is under that URL, and it's going to give you everything, right? It's going to give you all of the different content from all of those pages. So this is a pretty hefty task, and I recommend when you're testing this out, you just do scrapes because crawl can really cost you quite a bit of credits. And then map here, this is going to give you a sitemap of the URLs. And it's really just going to give you context of what the entire website contains. Now, there is this neat feature from Firecrawl, and what this does is it uses an LLM, a large language model. It uses AI to get just the right information from the website that you're passing over. So if you're doing some kind of coding or something and you need the LLM to understand specific up-to-date documentation on a specific feature, then you could use this extract feature, and it's going to go ahead and find exactly what you need from that website. Now, it's accepting like basically just a written response, so I can tell it what exactly I'm looking for when I want to use the extract feature. So what we're going to do is we're going to set all of these different features that Firecrawl offers as tools. Then our MCP server can kind of decide what it needs to fill out for these different tools, and it'll get to pick which one we use. So let's head over to the Firecrawl docs next to see exactly how we can set up these tools. So if I go to docs, what you're going to notice is they have their features down here. So we have the scrape, crawl, map, and extract. So if I wanted to make each of these tools over in N8N, I'm going to need to read through the different specifications that we need to set up for this. But it's pretty simple. I'm going to walk you through it. Again, like I'm not really a developer or a programmer. I just got into this like a year or two ago, and I've just come leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else because I've just spent a little bit of extra time steeping myself in it, really getting to understand it. And I think that you will be able to do that as well if you follow along here. Now, if you are serious about following along, I recommend joining AI Foundations. This is our community my brother and I started, and it's basically just a place where AI enthusiasts, business owners, people who really see the potential of AI can all come together, and we can learn together, we can chat together, we can jump on calls together. And we like to go by the 3 C's, right? We have community, we have courses under classroom here, and then we have our calendar or our calls that we do. And these calls are an ever-growing agenda that we have going. Like today, we just had a live Q&A with me and my brother. We help people set up their N8N workflows. We help with any other general AI questions. We're even helping people deploy applications. So if you go to this deploying your app, we've been getting into vibe coding and just talking about how a non-developer can kind of go about some of those tougher topics of like security and payments, all the things that you don't really want to deal with, but you have to deal with. And if you go to our classroom or our courses here, you're going to notice that we have the N8N Mastery course. And this is where you can learn N8N from top to bottom. You can learn everything that you need to know about it so that you can go from beginner to professional. And if I go over to our community tab here, you can actually write something. You can make a post. You can ask for support. You can share general AI information like AI news. You can share your wins. And this is actually super exciting because in our wins category here, you're going to notice that people are getting their first client with N8N and automations or with AI in general. They're upgrading at their job. Some people are even getting jobs at places like Apple. Then we even have this non-AI area because we're kind of all about artificial intelligence, but we're also about the other AI, which is authentic interaction, meaning we really kind of believe that in the future, AI is going to be a big part of our work. It's going to be a huge part of our life as consumers and producers. But what really matters is keeping that authentic human interaction intact. So that's what this community is all about. And if you're serious about jumping on board with us and getting plugged in, then I think you're actually going to have a lot of fun with this, and you're going to keep that human element while staying ahead of the curve. So if you want to join AI Foundations, I recommend you do it relatively soon because we are going to be raising the price at 1,500 members, and we're soon to be approaching that number. So what you can do right now is you can go down to the description, you can click the link in the description or the top pinned comment, and you can join AI Foundations. And if you invest in the annual, it's going to give you a little bit of a discount so that you don't have to pay this month to month. And it's really just set it and forget it. You're committed to AI, and we'll congratulate you when you join and really just welcome you into the family. So we're going to get back into the guide, but I just wanted to share that with you because I think I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't tell you how I learned this stuff. And that's by just interacting with the right people, connecting with the right information, and really proximity to the luck that I needed at the time, right? Because you can get closer to luck if you're looking in the right places. If you're learning APIs, if you're like stressed out about this stuff, like just join the community. We're going to keep you on track. So what I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to copy this description used to scrape a URL and get its contents. And we're going to use this as the description for our tool. So I'll go ahead and copy this, and then I'll head back over to N8N where we have our MCP server trigger. And I'm going to click on the tools right here. And now the tool that we want to use to connect to Firecrawl is HTTP. So if I type in HTTP here, and then I click on HTTP request tool, it's going to open this up, and I'm going to paste into the description what scrape had to say for itself, right? So use to scrape a URL and get its contents. This description is super important when you're setting up your tools, when you're setting up your MCP server, because it's going to tell your agent how to actually use this tool and what it's for. So I'm also going to rename this HTTP request to scrape so that it knows what that tool does. And now I'm going to head back to Firecrawl to figure out how to configure the rest of this. And now if I go down to the usage here, I can click on CURL, and typically you can copy this, but unfortunately N8N doesn't allow a way to import this if you're using an HTTP request as a tool. If you're just using it as a normal node, they do allow curl imports, and you can just literally copy this, paste it in, it generates it for you. But in this case, I'm going to have to copy a few things out of here. But it's pretty simple, right? So we have post, it says right here. And that's the type of HTTP request that we want to do. And then it also gives us this URL endpoint here. So I'm going to copy this endpoint, this v1 scrape. I'm going to head back to N8N, keeping in mind that this was a post method, and I'm going to change the method here to post, just like it said, and I'm going to paste in that URL, and then we're just going to jog back over to the Firecrawl docs, and I'm going to see what else they want. So this -h here stands for header. So there's two header parameters that we need to add. We need to add the content type, application JSON. We need to add the authorization, bearer your API key. So this is like how we can set this up to access our account basically with Firecrawl. So the first one is content type. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm going to remember that it's application/JSON. I'll head back over to the MCP server here, and we're just going to hit send headers. And then here for the name, I'm just going to paste in content-type. And then for the value provided, we'll do using field below. And I'm just going to enter what it said. So application/JSON. Make sure you type that out exactly how it wants it. So now that we have that first header parameter set, I'm going to go back and I'm going to see what the other one wanted. So I think it was authorization, and that would make sense. So I'll go back to Firecrawl here. And yes, it's authorization, bearer your API key. So this is where you're going to put in your API key. And this is just a general practice that you're going to want to follow when you're using your API keys. This is like your password. Like, you don't want this just leaking anywhere Otherwise, people are going to be able to use up your credits on Firecrawl or whatever application you're using. But when you're authorizing and you're putting a header in, you could just use that header that N8N provides, but that's not what I would recommend. It's less secure and it's not going to be as easy to reuse that credential in the future. So I'm going to show you how to put your header authorization in the right place inside of N8N. So if I copy this authorization here, and then I'm going to remember that it's bearer space your API key, and I'm going to go back to N8N. And then what you're going to do is they've actually added this authentication tab here. So I can just click, and then I can click on generic credential type. And then if I click on this new dropdown that appeared, I can simply click header auth. So this is a header authorization. This is perfect for what we need. I'll click header auth. And then next, I'm just going to click this dropdown that just appeared, and we're going to create a new credential because now you can see all of my credentials are here, and I'm just going to hit create new credential because now we're actually accessing Firecrawl. So I'll go ahead and rename this so that I know what this is for. I'll just say this is the Firecrawl MCP server, and you can really name it whatever, just something that you'll remember there. And then for the name, we're going to paste in that authorization, or you can type it out. And then for the value, we're going to type in bearer, and then I'm going to put a space. I'm going to hit the space bar after I type bearer, all caps. And then we can go and get our API key from Firecrawl. Now, in order to access this, you're just going to go back over to Firecrawl. And I'm actually going to go to my playground on the front end here. And once I've created an account, I can just go into my dashboard. And then the beautiful thing about this is our API key is just boom, it's right there. So I can just click copy API key, and then I can head back over to N8N, and I can paste that right after the bearer space. So paste and then save. And now our Firecrawl MCP server credentials are in there. So if I close this, now I can just, no, I don't want to save it. Now I can just select the header auth Firecrawl MCP server here. And anytime I want to authorize for that, it's going to be in my credentials. It's going to be nice and secure and safe in there. So that's just a good practice for adding header auth. You could add it as a header parameter like I did here, where you just type authorization and then you put in the value of bearer space API key. But in this case, we just want to use this header auth method. Now let's head back over to the Firecrawl docs and see what else we need to add to this HTTP request. And you're going to get fast at this. So if you feel like this is a lot right now, this is just a skill that you're going to get and you're going to acquire to be able to build different automations and different MCP servers in the future. And it's going to be super powerful for you. So I encourage you to stick around, and I'm proud of you for making it this far in the video. So what I want you guys to do right now is, if you're still watching, just head down to the comment section and leave a comment. What inspired you to click on this video, and why are you still here? Like, what are you excited about with MCP servers? I'm genuinely curious to know what brought you to this video and what got you this far, because you are part of a minority of people who have made it this far. It's only a small percentage of people that are really going to dig into this stuff and understand it. So let's head back over to the Firecrawl docs after you've left your comment, and just scroll down a bit here, and we're going to see this next section here with URL and formats. Now, this is what we're going to want to put in our body after this D tag here, or after this D flag. So we're going to need a URL and we're going to need formats. And the beauty of this is I can just copy this JSON right here. That's what this is right here. This sort of like structure. It's basically a way for the code to understand what we're trying to pass. So we're trying to give it a URL so that it knows what URL we're going to scrape. And then we're giving it the formats that we want to receive that in. We want to receive it in Markdown, which is just really simple, almost plain text that's really easy to understand and read for human and large language model. And then we're also asking for HTML. So if we're asking for both, it's going to send both to us. So this is kind of nice. We can decide which formats we want, but for now, I'm just going to copy this template right here. And we're going to head back over to N8N. And I'm going to click on send body. And then down here, I can just click on this specify body, and I can click using JSON below. Now you can use fields if you want. I could just type this out manually. I could say URL, and then I could put in the URL that I want using the field below. Or actually in this case, we could use the by model, and this would force the model to fill out the URL. But in this case, I'm just going to use JSON just to show you how that works, because honestly, this is the more complicated way to do it, but you're going to understand it better. And overall, I think it's a better skill to acquire if you know how to use JSON. You can go and copy these workflows. You can use templates all you want, but if you don't understand how this stuff works, it's not going to be a fun time using N8N. So just click using JSON below and follow along here. Now you're going to notice it gives me this note, use a placeholder for any data to be filled in by the model. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So if I paste in this JSON here, I'm going to have a URL and I'm going to have formats. So I'm just going to actually backspace this curly bracket so that it's lined up like so. And if I zoom in just a bit here so that we can really see this, you're going to notice that we have the URL. And this is where you're going to put that placeholder for the URL. And the format, we could make that a placeholder as well. But let's say I just want it to give me Markdown, right? So I could just delete that HTML and the comma that was along with it. So I just want Markdown. And the reason being is I don't want to overwhelm the LLM that I'm sending this to. I just want it to get the plain text of that URL. Markdown is a good practice if you're trying to get context for your agent. So we're going to leave it on Markdown, and here for the URL, we're going to use a placeholder. Now, the neat thing about this tool is we're getting to the bottom of this HTTP request here, and this is the last thing you really need to do is you need to define what your placeholders are. So these are the things that the model is actually going to fill out to customize your tool request. So if I hit add definition here, I can put in a placeholder name of URL, and then I can give it a description. So I can say, this is where you enter the URL for the page that you want to scrape. Perfect. That's all you really need to do. And then for the type, we can just make it a string, and a string is just a line of text. So it'll know that it needs to pass a string. If you select number, it'll expect to pass a number. Boolean will expect a 1 or a 0 or a true or a false. And JSON, you can do that as well if you want to pass actual JSON in your message. Now, I'm just going to go with string, and this is pretty much ready to go. Now, all I need to do, since this URL is the name here, is I need to, where the URL is, delete that. And then I just need to put some curly brackets and type in URL right here in the JSON. So now it'll know that it needs to fill that out because we have a placeholder definition set. Okay, perfect. Now our HTTP request for the scrape is pretty much ready to go. So if I go back to Canvas here, you're going to notice that now I have this single scrape tool here. It's defined, it has a name, everything is good to go. Now, one thing that you're going to want to do when you're working inside of N8N is you're going to want to save frequently. In fact, I've broken my number one rule of saving after every change, but what you can do is you can just click this orange save button up here and you can manually save this because it's not going to automatically save for you. So just make sure you're saving frequently as you go throughout this process. And now personally, I want to make sure this works. I don't want to go and build out this entire MCP server with all of the different tools coming off of it and then just come to find out that it didn't work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly test this out. And in order to test this, we're going to make this workflow active. And then I'm going to hit got it. And I'm going to click into my MCP server trigger. I'm going to switch to production URL. And I'm just going to click on this MCP URL. And this is going to copy the production URL. This is what we're going to use to call this MCP server. So once I've copied that, I can go back to Canvas. And you're not going to want to click back in because if you do, it flips it to test URL. So once you switch to production, go back to Canvas, and then now we're in production. So what we can do next is we can work on the client side. And this is just for testing purposes right now. This tool isn't fully fleshed out, but I want to make sure my agent can talk to this one tool that we already have for this MCP server. So I'll go back to my overview here, and I want to create a new workflow. And I'm going to name this workflow here, Scraping Agent. And now there's all different types of ways that you can talk with your agent inside of N8N. You can use Telegram, you can use Slack, Microsoft Teams, you can use WhatsApp. There's all kinds of different methods. You can even build your own custom tool to talk to this with. And you can use something like Lovable or Cursor to vibe code that out. But for the sake of simplicity and for testing purposes, what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to hit this add first step, and we're going to type in chat. And I'm going to use the N8N chat trigger. Now, what this does is it allows us to just chat right here in N8N and practice on this. And if you wanted to, you could even stick with this later down the line. You don't have to switch to a different tool for the chat side. But I'll just click chat trigger, and then I'll go back to Canvas. And now we have our chat trigger here. The next thing that we need to add is our AI agent. So this is also a simple way to do it. If you have this chat trigger, all you have to do is hit plus. Then you can type in AI agent. You can click on AI agent. And from here, I can sort of like configure this AI agent and give it some instructions. So if I go back to Canvas, you're going to notice that there are a few requirements here to get this AI agent running. The first is a chat model. So this is the large language model that we're going to be using for this particular agent. So if I click this plus right here, I can type in OpenAI, and you'll notice that we have this OpenAI chat model. So this is going to allow us to connect to any OpenAI chat model, any sort of like ChatGPT or whatever you're used to. So if I click on OpenAI chat model, now I can select the model. And actually, you'll need to select a credential first. So in order to do this, you can click on this dropdown, click Create New Credential, and you're going to head over to platform.openai.com. So as you can see here, I'm on platform.openai.com. And once you're here, you're going to need to log in or sign up if you haven't already done that. It's important to note that this is separate from the ChatGPT account that you already have. So even if you have a ChatGPT account that you're paying for or you're using, you're still going to need to sign up for their developer portal in order to access it for this case. Now, again, this might sound confusing, but this is one of those steps that once you get it down once, it's just going to feel like riding a bike. You're going to get used to it. So since I already have signed up and I already have an account, I'm just going to hit login. And personally, I'm going to continue with Google because that's where my account is saved. And then once you're logged in, you're going to see your profile picture up here, and you're also going to see this settings gear. And what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to click on that settings gear. So click on that, and then that's going to open up this new side panel here. And what you're going to want to find first is the billing area. So billing is where you're going to set up your card and all of your payment information for basically paying to keep this running. Now, I will just say that OpenAI has some pretty reasonable models, and you're probably not going to have to pay a whole lot to get started with this, just $5-10 to begin with and to test out. But this is going to cost pennies per response. So don't be too concerned with the cost of this. You can set limits, you can keep an eye on your usage here, and overall it's not too expensive, especially if you're just doing personal use cases. So you are going to need to go into billing though, and you're going to need to set up your payment details in order to get this to work. Once your payment details are set up, you're going to then go to API keys. So I'll click on API keys, and then what I'll do next is I'll create a new secret key. And I'm going to name this MCP Scraping Agent Test. And I'm going to select a project. Now, your project that you select is probably just going to be the default project, but in this case, I'm using my demo project. And then I'm going to hit Create Secret Key. Now I'll go ahead and copy this key, and we'll head back over to N8N where we're entering the credentials for our OpenAI chat model. And I'm just going to paste in that API key, and I'll go ahead and rename this as well to MCP Agent Scraping Test. And I'll just go ahead and hit save. Just aside, this doesn't really matter what you name this. It's just a way for you to find it. Same with that API key over in OpenAI. You don't need to match up the names or anything like that. All that we really need is this API key. So once you're done with that, just hit save. And then here where you have credentials to connect with, you're just going to make sure you select that key that you just added. And then boom, you'll have access to all of the OpenAI models that you can normally access on the front end. So if I scroll through here, my favorite one to use with MCP servers is O3 Mini. So if I type in O3 Mini, I should see that pop up. If you don't, just try O3. Yeah, so we needed that dash there. So I'm going to use the O3 Mini 2025-0131. This one I found is a lot better at delivering results, and it has less of what we call hallucinations in the AI world. A hallucination is when the AI outputs information and acts like it's correct, but really it's giving you like some garbage information or something that's incorrect. O3 Mini is really good at avoiding this. It's not 100% perfect, but it's a lot better than something like 4.0 Mini, which I've seen just some horror stories with people using that model. So I recommend going with O3 Mini. It's pretty reasonable in terms of pricing, and the quality is just amazing. So once you've selected that, you can go back to Canvas, and now we have our OpenAI chat model here. The next step in creating an AI agent is you need to give it a memory of the chat that you're having. So in this case, we're just going to click the plus under memory, and I'm going to go with the simple memory. And the nice thing about simple memory here, guys, is all it needs is this session ID. And the session ID is really just a way to track that conversation. So it's a unique number letter combo that's going to represent the conversation that you're currently having. So if you're connecting to something like Telegram or Slack, you're going to actually give it a defined session ID that represents the chat that you're in Slack or in Telegram or WhatsApp. But in this case, since we're just using the chat trigger node, we can automatically pull it from our chat trigger. So if you just select this option here, connected chat trigger node, it will automatically keep a memory of whatever you're typing into that chat. Again, if you're struggling with this concept of connecting to different chat tools, then I recommend joining our community because we actually have a section just for that. Over in AI Foundations, you can go into the classroom, you can go to the N8N Mastery course, and then if you go to the communication mediums, we show you how to connect to Telegram with both text, and we also show a text and voice demo. And then we also have Slack, WhatsApp, and Open Web UI for those who are more of a local crowd, who like to use the local tools and do it on their own device. Again, you can join the community by using the link in the description below or the top pinned comment. Now, let's just stick with the connected chat trigger node for this tutorial. Next, we're looking at the context window length, and this is how many past interactions or past messages that this AI is going to be able to remember. This agent, in this case, is going to be able to remember the 5 past messages that you've had with it. If I wanted to bump this up, I could do something like 10, and that's going to make it have a longer term memory of the conversation. So that's just something that you can also tweak and play around with if you are running into issues where the agent doesn't remember your conversation or it's forgetting something. But these are the 2 basic things you need to set up, is the session ID and the context window length. Now I'll go back to the canvas, and here we have our memory, we have our model. And next, this is where the fun part comes in. We're going to add in our MCP server. We're going to add our tool. So if I click the plus button here and I type in MCP, you're going to see the MCP client tool. I'm going to click on that. And this is referring to the MCP server that we created. So before I copied that webhook and I ended up, not saving that webhook. But the nice thing is we can always go back and grab that. We can also hook up our authentication for that if we did set up authentication over there. And we can decide which tools we want it to use. So we already have one tool. We have the scrape tool. And all I'm going to need to do is go grab my URL that I have in my other workflow now and paste that in here. So I'll go back to Canvas and I'll save this just to make sure we keep our progress. Then I'll go to my overview and I'll click into my MCP server for Firecrawl. Then I'm going to click back into the MCP server trigger, switch to a production URL and click on it to copy it. Then we'll go back to Canvas and I'll go back to my overview. And then we'll go back to our scraping agent and I'll click into this MCP client tool and I'm going to paste this right here. And now this will be able to access that tool. So if I wanted to, I could just go in and I could do selected tools and I could choose that I just want to include this scrape tool, for instance, or I could do all except, and I could choose which ones I don't want to include. But in this case, I'm just going to go with all. We have one tool in there right now, and that's fine how it is. Now, if I go back to Canvas, now we can test out if this AI agent is really working. We can see the magic happen, and we can see if our MCP server is able to be contacted. So I'm just going to click on save first, and then we're going to go ahead and open the chat. And I'm just going to say, scrape the website books.toscrape.com and let me know what the top rated books are on that website. Now, this is just a test again, and I'm using this test website where I know we can ethically scrape it. And I'll even put in the https:// just so it knows to use that full URL there. And then I'm just going to send this off. And the AI agent is going to go to work here, accessed our chat model, checked the memory. Now it's trying to use that MCP server tool. All right, perfect. We got a green check mark. That's a good sign. And we'll see what it responds with here. It should come back with some context from our MCP clients. Okay, perfect. So it did come through. The Books to Scrape website is a demo site meant for practicing web scraping. Although it lists many books, it doesn't have a dedicated top rated category. It's okay. And I'll go back to my overview now. And to check what this MCP server received and what it did with that information, we can go into the MCP server. We can click on executions. And here I can see the successful executions that it had. So right here, this first one is going to be the most recent. And if I wanted to see the information that it passed, I can just click into this scrape. And yes, I can see that we had a successful return, and then it gave me the markdown here. So it gave me the menu structure, and it came back with some information about this particular website. So now let's go back to the scraping agent and let's ask it a different question. All right, so now I'm just going to hit open chat, and I'm just going to say, name a book that you find on books.toscrape.com. Let's see this time if it can come back with some specific information, because I was asking it about top rated books, but in this case, I just want to make sure that the agent is actually getting the right information. So it is using that tool here, going back to the model now that it received that. And it says one of the books you can see on bookstoscrape.com is A Light in the Attic. So let's go back to that website and make sure that is indeed available. All right, and now I'm here on Books to Scrape, and as you can see, it did find the first book and it returned it for me. So that's perfect. Now, since we know that this one tool is working for scraping, we can go back and we can add in those other tools for the MCP server. So if I go back to my overview, and then I click into the MCP server Firecrawl, I can then go and add in some new tools. So we have scrape, but now let's add the other tools that Firecrawl allows us to use. So to simplify this process, I'm just going to duplicate this one that already exists, and we'll just edit it a bit. So we'll drag tool to connect that, and now it's connected, and I'll click into it. And here we're just going to change the description, the name, the URL, and potentially this JSON here. So let's go back to Firecrawl. And let's switch to the crawl. Now here, I'm just going to grab this description for the endpoint. We'll go back into N8N and we'll paste the description here. And I'll also rename this to crawl. And then I'll hit rename. Now over here in the docs, if I scroll down to the usage, I can see that we have a different URL endpoint. So I'll copy that and we'll replace this URL right here. And the authentication should stay the same. So that's the beauty of being able to just copy this. We already have that ready. And we're sending the header of application/JSON. And then down here, we're just going to need to change out the body a bit. And we might need to alter some of our placeholder definitions as well. So here under this D flag, we are going to see that there are some different things that we can add. So we can add scrape options for when it scrapes. We can add a limit for how many pages it's going to scrape, and we can also add in a URL. So I'm just going to copy all of this information here, and we're going to go back in here to the JSON, and I'm just going to paste that in. And now I'll just backspace this just to get it to the end. And for our URL, we already have that. So I can just put in our placeholder for it, since that URL placeholder already exists right here. And it tells it this is where you enter the URL for the page you want to scrape. In this case, I'm just going to say this is the place where you enter the URL for the base page that you want to crawl for this website. And for this example, I'm just going to make the limit 5 just so that it doesn't overwhelm the system and scrape too many things, but you can play around with that limit if you want. I recommend starting a bit lower. And for the formats, we can go with Markdown or HTML. I'll go with HTML for this one just to test it out and show you guys how that kind of works. And now this is good to go. If we wanted to add some different placeholders, we could just hit add definition and then we could put our placeholders in. But I think this looks pretty good. So now we'll go back to Canvas and we're just going to repeat this process for the other tools that Firecrawl allows for. Now, I built out the extract and the crawl tool, but these ones are a little bit more complex and they actually cost a whole lot more to run. So I'm actually just going to delete these and we're just going to stick with the scrape and map tool for the sake of this guide. And now let's go and test those out and make sure that they work. So now I'm here inside of my AI agent. And if I go to the hide chat and then I hit open chat, then I can go in and I can actually ask it to map out the URLs of a particular website. So if I wanted to understand something like the documentation of the Firecrawl website, I could first say, please map the URLs of this website. And I could send that off and it's going to give me a sitemap for the documentation of Firecrawl, which comes from docs.firecrawl.dev. All right, perfect. Now it went through and it actually extracted all of those URLs. So it has all of the context that it needs to go through and now scrape the right pages. So I'm just going to say scrape the pages about extract and tell me how to send an extract request based on that information. All right, so now it has this context here. It has all of these URLs and it's going to look through and it's going to say, oh, here's a page about extract. And if it keeps scrolling through here, it might find another page about extract like this one right here. And it's just going to go through and scrape all of that information and it's going to come back with a solid answer as to how I use the extract feature with this tool. All right, so it says based on the information from the documentation, you can send an extract request by making a post request to Firecrawl API endpoint. And it just tells me all about how to do that based on the information that it scraped. So it even gives me the curl right there and it gives me the response. So it's giving me all the information that I need. So this has been the ultimate guide for creating an MCP server and an MCP client side in N8N. And I hope that you guys thoroughly enjoyed this guide. I want to remind you to join the AI Foundations community using the link below if you want to join a community of AI and automation enthusiasts who are building stuff like this every single day. And with that being said, I can't wait to see you in my next tutorial. So make sure to like this video so that YouTube knows that you like these types of thorough content. And also subscribe to my channel and hit the bell to get updated when I come out with new trainings just like this one. All right, we'll see you in the next amazing update with N8N.